Everybody, welcome to the Career Accelerator Lecture Series, our first of two events this spring. It's my pleasure to welcome you. I'm Bob Parsons. I'm a professor in civil, environmental, and architectural engineering and host of this series. This is a series that's sponsored by the School of Engineering Advisory Board. It's been offered since the fall of 2020, and the goal is to bring in alumni and friends of the university that have been out and been very successful in their careers to share what are some of the things that they've learned that can help you be successful and get off to an accelerated start for your engineering career. Today we have Cody LoMonaco with Burns McDonnell. Cody's worked professionally for 8+ years supporting the power generation and power delivery industries for Burns McDonnell. Over his tenure at Burns McDonnell, Cody has worked in various technical design, field engineering, project leadership, and department leadership roles. Cody is currently the section manager for the Substation Civil-Structural group, as well as the quality representative for the transmission and distribution business line for the Chicago office. He's also presented at regional technical conferences for the power delivery industry on non-destructive testing methods for deep foundations. Cody has passion for career mentorship, relationship building, process improvement, and technical excellence. In his free time, and you will someday have free time again, Cody enjoys golfing, playing guitar in a band, listening to and writing music, volunteering, weightlifting, and drawing, and he comes from a large extended family, several of whom are also Jayhawks and are a big part of why he attended KU. We're glad to have you. Please welcome Cody LoMonaco. Before I turn it completely over to him, a little bit on how this is going to work. So he's going to present for, I don't know, 35 minutes, whatever, something like that. At the end of that, there will be a question and answer time. We want this to be interactive. We want your questions. We even have a few door prizes for those who have questions. So keep your questions in mind as we go along. And with that, Cody, it's all yours.
Thank you. All right, can you all hear me? Great, I'll try to stay about here. All right, so a little bit about my company. We always start meetings, presentations like this with inclusivity moments and safety moments. These are just values that matter to us. We want to make sure that people feel included, that they're part of whatever presentation or meeting we're holding. And safety is extremely important to us. We are a large engineering and construction firm, so safety is of the topmost priority. We always want to make sure our people, our contractors, get home safe. So I'll start with our for all moment. So I wanted to talk a little bit about name pronunciation. Since you're all at a university, I'm sure either you personally or you know someone who has maybe had a name that is a little bit more difficult to pronounce. This is something that I've run into a lot in my career, where people that I've met have tailored down their names because it's too hard to teach people to pronounce it correctly. So I wanted to start off by saying, if you are that person where your name is a little bit more difficult to pronounce in the English vernacular, don't be afraid of that. Encourage people, coach them, let them fail a few times, be open to them failing. And if you are someone who does not have that, that's something that they have to be aware of. Being an advocate for those people and making it okay for them to tell you, you didn't quite do it right, is always really helpful. And to a much lesser degree, my last name gets messed up all the time. Listening to Siri say my name is comical. I don't know where she gets all of the rhythm and consonants that she throws in there, but makes its way through. So, all right, so for my safety moment, I wanted to talk a little bit about anxiety. I think you all just came back from spring break, right? So, I know if I were you, I'd be feeling a little bit anxious. You got stuff to get done through the rest of the semester. If you're going through these types of feelings, don't worry about it. It's very common. The stressful thing about anxiety is that it can manifest in a physical sense. And whenever that's happening, it's good to use techniques like grounding, which you kind of tie yourself back to reality. So up here on the screen, there's a few indicators of how you can ground yourself if you're ever experiencing severe anxiety. And also, sometimes this can be brought on by exposing yourself to naturally stressful or draining activities. So take breaks from social media, downtime, recharge, get off screens, all of this helps. And if if you know someone who's going through stuff like this, it's always helpful to be an advocate, empathize with them, help them through that. And if you are going through that, never hesitate to reach out for help, whether it's just a friend or if you need more help than that, don't hesitate. It's always worth it to get back on a level playing field. So a little bit about me. So I got my undergraduate degree at Marquette University in Milwaukee. See someone here is wearing a Packers shirt, and it's like the third time I've ever seen a Packers shirt in Kansas, so good for you. You're from Milwaukee?
I got a lot of friends who go to Marquette.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I think they're going to do okay in the tournament this year. And then I came to KU for my graduate degree to get my Master's of Science in Civil Engineering, concentrated in structures. In between all of that, as Dr. Parsons was talking about, I have a fair amount of extracurriculars I'd love to participate in, but my faith, my family, my friends are the most important thing in my life. They are why I am who I am. I couldn't do any of the things I do without them. One of which is my loving fiance, who has helped me through many, many things. And since then, I joined Burns McDonnell. I've been with them for almost 9 years, going on that in June. Right now, I am the section manager for the Civil-Structural group within the Substation business line. So our company is broken up into these overarching market sectors and then business lines beneath that. So this is one of those business lines beneath a market sector. And through that, I've led projects for the civil structural discipline. I've had a fair amount of client interface. I've spent a fair amount of time in the field, about 14 months on field assignments for nuclear power projects. And I've also been a civil and structural design engineer on a wide variety of projects. Besides that, a little bit about the personal things that Dr. Parsons was mentioning. I am in a band. I play guitar. The band is with my best friend from undergrad. He's been doing it since then, and he came up with the name during undergrad. So it probably could be improved if we're all being honest with ourselves, but it's been a lot of fun. I love music. I love writing music. It's a way that I've also pushed myself to kind of go out of my comfort zone. Playing music in front of thousands of people is not something I ever thought I would do, but I'm really glad I got to do it. So for my presentation, do we have any Tolkien fans in the room? Ooh, there we go. So if you're a Tolkien fan, you can kind of see the quote that I'm getting at. What I wanted to talk about in terms of your careers is very few people have straight linear careers. A lot of it is going to be fluid and changing. And to some degree, you know, when you're in school and you're getting through that part of your life, that can be very linear. There are milestones. You progress to the next thing over and over again. But once you get into your career, it becomes different. There are still milestones to hit, but you kind of go through these periods of growth and plateauing and success, and all of that kind of balances out together. So the title of my presentation is Wander, but Don't Get Lost. As you're working your way through a very fluid system, sometimes it can be easy to get off track. You start focusing on the wrong things in your life or your career. It's very easy for that to happen. If nothing else, it's going to be challenging and different than what you're used to, but you're going to be better for it ultimately. So as I was talking about, you go through these periods of growth. Growth is going to be uncomfortable no matter what you do, and you have to be open to that. I can say from the different internships and project experiences that I've had, growth periods are usually not the fun periods. They are the periods where you get tested, where you're doing things that maybe you don't necessarily, that's not the thing you want to do every day for the rest of your life, but you learn something from them. And it's important to take away from those experiences. So, anybody here seen the show Schitt's Creek? Okay. So one thing I wanted to make sure that you guys got out of this presentation was, what do I do now? So hopefully I'm not talking in ethereal concepts that just kind of stay up here, but this scene from the show is, if you haven't seen it, it's really funny, you should go look it up. But the son is trying to make enchiladas. The mom is telling him to fold in the cheese, and neither one of them knows what that means. She just keeps saying, fold in the cheese, and he says, can you tell me what that is? And she says, no, you need to just learn this. Can you just teach me one thing to fold in the cheese? So what does that mean in terms of your career? Well, in what I'm trying to do here, I wanted to present advice and ideas that would have been helpful to me when I was sitting where you were sitting. Because obviously you have a lot of great professors that are going to set you up with the technical theory and know all that you'll need as you enter your careers. And to some degree, no matter what job that you're going into, no matter what field, they know you're coming in as a new engineer. They know you're going to need help. Where I felt I could be most valuable was talk about the other things that I've experienced in my career that have helped progress me forward in my career. And I think are some of the intangibles that separate both new engineers, mid-level engineers, and senior engineers as they progress through their careers. So something I want to talk about is impact. So I worked for a large company, and one of the mantras of that company is having an entrepreneurial spirit to anything we do. So you own it, you do it. If it's your career, you go out, you chase it, you figure out what it is you're looking for, and there are people there to support you as you go through that. It's also very interconnected, which is something that I was always looking for. I wanted a lot of challenge. I didn't want to know exactly what I was going to do the next day, and I've found that, and I was lucky to find that. One of the things I was not prepared for coming out of school is that success in school is understandably different than success in your career. When you first get into your career, there's always going to be, some iteration of you take on a task, you do a good job, you do it on time, you come under budget. Those are all good things, and you need to do those things. At a certain point, it will shift to, yes, you did those things, that was what you were at, that's what was directly asked of you, but what was the impact you made? And you start getting measured by the impact and not just the things you did. Because the work and the effort that you're putting in is always good. It's always a good thing, you should put in the effort. But if it's not making a positive impact on the back end, it can be sometimes a little bit discouraging to be reviewed against that, because it's not always a tangible thing. And being aware of that's, on the daily basis, you are trying to make an impact on your direct coworkers, your supervisor, your client, the entities that you have to interface with. It's a big task to take on. But once you make that mental shift, when you start looking to make the impact instead of just doing the thing to get to the next stage, it becomes a lot easier to work through. But the reason I'm homing in on these things is because I think these are the things that will help separate you early on in your career and hopefully help you to avoid hitting some of those dangerous plateaus where you don't know how to move forward, you feel like you're stuck, because that's never a good place to be. So the three topics that I wanted to talk about were relationship building and emotional intelligence. And at least in terms of relationship building, regardless of whether or not you work in an industry or for a company that is consulting oriented or very client facing, you have to interface with people. Your designs, your products have to interface with people, and the more you can understand them, the more successful that you're going to be. Also wanted to talk about creative problem solving and continuous learning. So I'm sure you've heard this before, but self-teaching is a skill that you need to get good at. And if I were you, I would try to do it while you have professors around to test things out on, have them come to them with, some crazy one-offs of how would this concept change if I were being thrown into this situation? How do I apply these three things to a bigger problem or project that we're working on? But the ability to plan out how you problem solve is just as important, if not more important, than any direct design or problem solving you do downstream. If you don't put in the time to think through how you're going to not only just design a bridge, but design a bridge that must span over a small town, and their houses cannot be crushed or moved while you're doing construction, and certain aspects have to be repaired. Once you throw in all the actual constraints of the job, that's where it gets difficult. Designing the beam is not usually the difficult part. It's designing the beam around all the other problems you have to consider. And then last but not least, I wanted to talk through a little bit about what work-life balance looks like, at least from the perspective of someone working in a consulting firm, and how that plays into teamwork and being part of a team. So, relationship building and emotional intelligence. So I've seen individuals be more successful when they can both be very proficient in their craft And in the same breath, build meaningful relationships, have tough conversations, either with colleagues, their clients. There's a big difference between someone who is an outstanding engineer, but cannot help make a case for why we should make this decision, cannot help a client who, they're not an engineer, but they need to decide whether or not they're going to spend money on this problem that you've told them about. How do you help them see the issues, mitigate the risks, and understand that you are trying to help them? That is a very hard thing to teach, but spending meaningful time trying to improve in that area will always pay dividends. If nothing else, your colleagues, your clients, any entities you interface with need to be able to rely on you. They have to be able to trust your word. If nothing else, being able to know that your yes means yes, your no means no is a great attribute to have. And being able to balance that with all the other risks you have to manage is difficult. So, the human side of engineering. One of the more challenging aspects of being an engineer is you are going to interface with people a lot more than you think you will, and every design that you put forth is going to interface with people a lot more than you think it will. And part of your job is going to be, how do I understand the people I'm working with, I'm working for, the permitting bodies that that need to approve my work. If you don't understand them, you're always going to be stuck off here in the corner. I like this quote from Abe Lincoln. I don't like that man, I must get to know him better. You will also encounter plenty of people in your career that you don't see eye to eye with. And either way, you're going to have to learn to work with them. You're going to have to drive to a common goal. And a lot of times when this has happened to me in my career, I found more success when I let go of the fact that we didn't agree, we didn't see eye to eye, and I just took it upon myself to build the relationship. Sometimes it just all has to come from you, and you have to be solely focused on achieving that goal of moving this project forward, solving this issue. And sometimes that's going to require that coming all from you and not necessarily from the other person. As part of this, anytime you're interfacing with other people, you need to be generous with your time. You need to actively listen to what they're saying. That last point, active listening, in a consulting setting, if you don't do this, you have missed on the first half of what you needed to do, which was understand what the problem was and understand it beyond what they're directly asking you, because they're paying you to understand not only solve the engineering problem, but how do I do everything else that has to happen for the engineering problem to be solved, and I end up with a successful end product. So in regards to this specific topic, I did want to talk about one of my personal experiences. So I used to work in the nuclear industry, and one of the jobs that I was on site for about 7 months, and it was a tough job. It was a very high stress situation. We were working 6 10s in an 8-hour day every other Sunday, so I was basically doing nothing but working. The contractors were very stressed, and I am basically the middleman between the nuclear plant and my client who's helping decommission the nuclear plant, and a contractor who usually puts up transmission towers running and gunning, and I'm telling them all the things they can't do because the NRC says they can't do them. So I am not their favorite person. I am also only 25, 26 years old, so they do not want to hear my opinion about why they shouldn't be doing the thing they're doing. One of the things that I realized I was not doing a good job of in this situation was I was doing absolutely nothing to understand why they felt the way they felt. I also was, I was doing a lot to support them in the background. I was trying to bolster them up to my client and my client's client so they were comfortable with the work they were doing, but they never saw any of that. So for 7 months, they're just angry at me the whole time. And the day I'm leaving, I'm saying goodbye, and I just said something to the group, and I told them for the first time in 7 months that they did a tremendous job, because I've done this at other locations where my job was extremely stressful, and it was stressful, but more so just because of the nature of the job. They were the easy part. They were on top of their stuff, they knew what they were doing, and the sheer fact that I never said that to them until the very end of the job, it was like a light switch flipped, and all of a sudden they're all coming up to me saying they're gonna miss me, and it was a pleasure to work with me, because this whole time they have this perception that I think they don't know what they're doing, and I'm just some 25, 26-year-old kid telling them what to do. So I was not paying attention to the human side of that project. I was not paying attention to the needs of the people I was working with. But once I did that, I ended up building a lot of good relationships with that contractor on the back end. So, story of you. One of the most important skills that I have ever learned in my professional career is being able to tell a story. And part of why I had to learn to tell a story is because when I first started interviewing for jobs, I was not very good at interviewing. And I had a good GPA, but I didn't have a great GPA. I didn't have the most stellar internship experience in undergrad, and I didn't have all the best extracurriculars. So one of the best pieces of advice I ever got, it was actually from my dad. He said, you know, anytime you're in front of someone, whether it's a pitch, an interview, whatever, you're telling a story about yourself. And so I just accepted the fact that for a while I wasn't going to be good at interviewing, and I was going to use each interview as a way to get better at it. I understood that this was going to be a growth period, and this wasn't going to be super fun, but it was going to improve me for the long term. The other side of storytelling is that whether you've had a success, whether something has gone wrong, how you tell that story is extremely important. You must be ethical, you must be concise, you must be factual, but how you tell that or present that information to people is going to change their response. How you say it, the words you use all matter. And being able to do that in an effective way is so important, especially when things are not going well. Networking. So when I was where you are, my perception of networking was going to events, swapping business cards, shaking hands, telling people what my name was, and leaving. Where I have found the most success networking is less what I think most people think of networking and more me trying to make friends out of my colleagues, my clients, my vendors, my contractors. That approach for me has worked significantly better than the elevator pitch approach. Now, that being said, some people can just walk into a room, give an elevator pitch, and everyone wants to talk to them. And if you were that person, that's awesome. Cultivate that skill. It's always very useful. If you're not that person, if you're more introverted, you can still do this. It's just you have to find your own way of doing it. And it took me a long time to figure out what my way of doing it was. And for me, I like building one-on-one relationships more than I like just going into a circle of 10 people and trying to get them to pay attention to me. All right, emotional intelligence. So your ability to understand, sympathize, and relate to others will directly impact your ability to make an impact, whether that's your personal life or your professional life. To some degree, you're going to have to get good at understanding the position of the people around you, being able to read them a little bit and understand what they're feeling, why they're feeling it. Because at some point, you are going to work with someone, for someone, that is going to have an emotional response when something is going wrong, and it is going to have somewhere between 0% to 100% to do with you. And the only thing you can do in those situations is not feed into their emotional response and try to get down to the root of the issue, stay objective, and keep moving forward through the issue and the conversation. This is I will say, a tough skill to learn, but getting used to actively listening to people and taking an unselfish approach to engaging with others is a good first step. You're all in school, you're all busy people. I know when I was where you were at, I was very transactional with how I talked to people because I had to move on to the next thing, I had to keep moving. And even through the early parts of my career, I was kind of like that too. I have since switched to I listen much more than I talk, and I'm first trying to help the person I'm talking to, and then if there's something I need, I'll ask for that after I try to give them benefit out of the conversation. I've built significantly more relationships out of that than I ever have being very concise and very factual and trying to just get through it as quickly as I possibly can. So one of the areas where I've had to grow this skill was both in internships and in the nuclear experience I just talked about. I have been a field engineer for small municipal jobs, for large nuclear projects, and I can tell you that field engineering is a great experience. You will have technical challenges. It's that's not usually what you're dealing with day to day. The biggest area of growth that I found through that experience, though, was having to interface with so many different types of people, public entities, the community at large, my clients, their contractors, and having to explain issues and solutions to different people, knowing that the thing that they care about, or the thing that person A cares about, is completely different than what person B cares about. Learning to do that on the fly and building that skill set required me to pay more attention to what they were stressed about, what were their concerns, what were the problems they were dealing with. And once I started doing that, I knew exactly how to talk to everyone. I knew what they cared about. And if I wanted to give them more information, I could, but I didn't necessarily have to. Next, so continual learning and creative problem solving. Creative problem solving is probably the most directly useful skill you will have in any career that you take on, because to some degree, earlier when I was talking about you trying to make an impact, when the goal that you were trying to achieve becomes more and more conceptual and less tangible, you're going to be handed a problem that you have no idea how to solve, and you're going to have to come up with a plan to get to a solution. You will have to identify interested parties who are going to be affected by the decision you're making. You're going to have to identify who are the specialized people who are going to help you work through this problem. And then even more so, when you first get into initial stages of being an engineer in practice, the ability to narrow down the initial assumptions, scope, and come up with a plan to execute the design is so critical, and oftentimes a lot more difficult, because there is no right way to do this. Sometimes you just have to call the township, the county that you're working with, and make sure you understand if they have an issue with building solar fields, if they're going to allow you to connect a road from whatever development you're putting in to their highways. Those are the things that you learn as you go through project work, but having a mindset where you can be thrown into solving a problem, whether it's engineering related or not, and figure out your way through it is a very important skill. And a lot of that just has to do with accepting that you're not going to know how to solve most of the problems that are going to be put in front of you immediately. You are going to have to understand and look back at all the concepts and theory that you learned in school and come up with ways to know when to apply which concept or which theory. What is the value in making this decision versus the other decision, and how that's going to help you move all this forward. But that initial due diligence and risk management portion of any project is where big mistakes get prevented or made. Because if you mess up on that stage and you progress to design, your entire design will be based on this big input coming in, or this big assumption being true, or not having this study available to you at the time. And making sure you get that information when you need it, making sure that other people around you know that you need that information, and collaborating with the team around you or your client is going to be extremely important. So as part of continuous learning, what I was just talking about, where you will be in school, you're going to be taught a lot of concepts, and you're not going to remember exactly how to do all of them. You're not going to remember exactly how to design pre-stressed beams if you're not doing that every day. But if you're looking at a project or a problem that you're trying to work through, if you don't remember when a certain theory or concept comes into play, when it's useful, that is the first step. And then you have to be able to reteach yourself that concept that you were taught 3 to 4 years ago. Being able to move that forward with that can be difficult. So if you're not in the habit of teaching yourself in your coursework, it's better to get in the habit of doing that now, because you will do it continuously throughout your career. You will learn new approaches, new software, new theory. You will come across new challenges and new theory on specific projects as that becomes apparent based on the issues that you're dealing with. The other thing is, to some degree, no matter how much knowledge you take on, wisdom is something that you're going to earn over time. It's not necessarily something you can just plug and play and learn. So to some degree, you're going to have to accept that your career is a long game. It's going to be one of the longest things that you experience in your life, longer than you've probably been alive to this point. But being able to search for knowledge or for wisdom and seek that out and partner that with knowledge will allow you to make those tough decisions and will help you stand out from your peers. All right. Last of the three was work-life balance and teamwork. So work-life balance is a term that I think everyone throws out, and everyone who's applying for a job, everyone wants work-life balance. I think what's hard for people is to understand what is that and what are you really looking for. Work-life balance in any situation is going to be specific to you as a person. And one of the things I wanted to hit on was that in anything, your time is not being spent, it's being invested. And you have to make choices about where you invest your time, why you're investing it there. Because at the end of the day, if your career is the epicenter of your life, if that is where you want most of your time to go, that's great. Then you are making an active choice to invest your time there. If having a family is the most important thing to you and you're okay with your career taking a back seat to that at certain points, that's great too. But being aware that where the push and pull is going to happen in your life before you start, or while you're looking and before you start looking for jobs, will help you narrow down what job, what career, what company you really want to work for. So ultimately, if you want to work a 9 to 5 and just go to work, go home, it's going to be hard to do that in certain fields for certain companies because that's just not how they operate. If you know that's what you want though, then going after that is something you should do actively. The other part of work-life balance, at least from the perspective of a consultant, is that if you're in the right culture and setting, you all are trying to help each other achieve work-life balance. So one of the things that plays back a little bit into relationship building is that you have to be willing to help people around you when it's not convenient for you, because that is going to help them, but ultimately there's going to be a point where you need help from other people and it's not going to be convenient for them to do so. And having that good relationship between you and your coworkers is going to make it so that the team stays successful, you're looking out for each other, and you can help each other achieve the balance that you're looking for in your lives. But I love that quote from Mother Teresa, because it is a collective. If you work for a company where the culture is good, you are all going to succeed or fail together. You are all going to hold each other up or not. And you are going to spend most of your time with them day in and day out. So, putting it together. So these three things, the reason I was talking about them was because these are the things I've found have helped me drive towards positive impact in my career, in my personal life. And I've found that the intangible things are what tend to separate great engineers from good engineers. Your ability to teach your client, the people around you, your ability to understand the challenges of the people that you're dealing with, whether it's a client or a colleague, is important. Those relationships are going to ultimately set you up for success or failure and move you forward. So to close out, if there's something I would leave you all with, it's that you choosing to make an impact in your life, whether it's professional or personal, is going to be an active choice you have to make. A lot of the communication items that I'm talking about, a lot of the emotional intelligence items I'm talking about, these are all active decisions you have to make, and it comes from a place of humility, knowing that you are going to have to support others as much as they support you throughout your career and their career. The more you can do that, the more you can build genuine relationships, and it won't matter who you're building the relationship with. But other than that, that's all I had.
All right, well, thank you, Cody. That was great questions. Who's got a question? Over here. You get the mic. Yeah, this is being recorded for the School of Engineering webpage.
Cool. What are some habits that you've employed to have a better work-life balance?
I'll repeat the question. So what are the things I've done to create a better work-life balance? The first thing I did was I decided how much I wanted to invest in my career. And for me, investing in my career was a priority. So I invest a fair amount of time into that. But as I was kind of talking about for my personal life, I'm always trying to build those other things in my life that provide holistic balance. I'm the type of person who needs, a support network around me. So I make sure that I invest time into that. And I might let go of other trivial things. Like, I love video games. I don't play them anymore because that was an easy thing to let go of. It was a big time sink, but it was more important that I invest in my family and my friends. I'd rather play in the band than I would play more video games. I've also made a lot better use of my mornings. I am not a morning person, but I actively get up earlier, specifically so I can do the things I don't want to do first. And then I have more time throughout the day to sort through the things that actually take up a lot of my time and require a lot of my focus. So scheduling is really helpful. It's funny, I used to do it really habitually when I would get into like finals week and taking exams, because the only way I would study was if I made a schedule, and I could only tell if I was on track if I actually hit all those milestones. I still do that today, and it's when I am really busy, it's like the only way I know I'm progressing enough, because there are too many individual things for me to hit on and speak to.
What was the transition like when you went from school to working full time as an engineer? Like the transitional period, how did you transition from?
How was the transitional period going from school to being a full-time engineer? It was challenging. I think it was a little bit easier for me because when I was going into the workforce, I had gone through 4 internships in 4 different industries, and I was getting my master's degree. So I'd had a lot of coursework. I had worked for companies. I'd been in a professional setting a couple of times, so I kind of knew what to expect. What I wasn't as ready for was one of the things I was talking about was the being measured on an impact, because that's not always a tangible thing. So it was doing the task you're presented with is doing a good job. Going beyond that is more than just doing the task you're handed. It's doing the things that people don't have time to directly ask you to achieve a bigger goal. That's a hard mental shift to make. The other one was getting good at problem solving for things I didn't necessarily know how to do. So, if you go through a lot of structural courses, the problems get broken down into design this column with these inputs, design it when this little curveball has been thrown at you. In the real world, you're looking at a large system that you have to break down into digestible pieces so you can apply column theory or biaxial column theory. And now it's something that you understand and you can go back and look at your textbook. But until you do that, it's this huge problem and a lot of information to look at. So being able to take something really complex and break it down was a hard transition to make.
So in developing these soft skills that are useful, are there any opportunities that you recommend that we seek out as new graduates entering the workforce, like professional societies or stuff like that? Or how did you develop those skills so quickly?
How did I develop the soft skills that I was presenting about quickly? For one, I didn't develop them quickly because I didn't try to do it here. I kind of just adapted as I went. I will say the things that would have helped me more if I had paid more attention to them, I would have taken steps to make myself more comfortable with speaking in front of groups of people like this earlier on, because whether you're doing it here or in front of a client, we all do it at a certain point. I would suggest reading psychology books. They're really helpful. And understanding human psychology is something that will always be beneficial to you, regardless of what industry you're working on. One of the ones I've always liked is The Art of Zen and Motorcycle Maintenance. It's an easy book. It's like 130, 200 pages. It's about a guy going on a cross-country motorcycle trip, and the way he sees people is either they are mechanics or they are architects, and architects like things that are pretty, and mechanics like how things are, how they function. And it's about him understanding that people are always somewhere on this spectrum of being an architect or being a mechanic. It's not a dig at architecture students also. But those types of things, networking events are helpful, but you got to go into them with goals to know if you achieved something. Sometimes just getting exposed to them is helpful. The last thing I will say is, at least for the creative problem solving part, your professors only have so much time with you. You could learn more from them if you ask them to take you deeper down the rabbit hole, but they're only going to do that if you approach them and ask for that type of help.
Can you hear me?
He's
Oh.
only recording there.
Okay.
Not for the room, so
Okay.
just speak up.
So my question is, I've worked in the past in Ecuador. I'm from Ecuador, and I think I'm going to be working here in the US probably next year.
Okay?
My question is, what's your recommendation for someone who is looking for the business side and the growth of the company instead of the technical part? So how you will approach that perspective?
Okay. How would I approach a career for someone who wants to be more focused on the business side of engineering than
Yes.
the technical aspects of engineering? This is more my personal opinion. I think it depends on what type of business development person you want to be. If you really want to be an engineering professional who does business development, to me that is different than someone who wants to do business development purely. Doesn't matter what they're selling, doesn't matter what they're pushing, they like doing business development. I think being an engineering professional who can do business development means no matter what, you have a very strong basis in technical theory, and you, if anything, it's you're good at explaining things to people in a way that they will understand, and they don't have to be engineers to understand what you mean, which helps you sell ideas, helps you sell the problem solving that your company or the construction firm or the vendor that you work for is going to provide. If you wanted to go down that path, I would still suggest that you build a strong technical base for what you're doing, because ultimately that's what you're selling. That is what you're trying to get a client to buy into. It's not just you making the pitch. Then beyond that, the things that I was talking about, like being able to interface with people, being able to read them, helping them through tough situations, those are all skills you can learn as you work through the initial stages of your career. But I would try to focus on, do you actually understand how projects get funded? Do you understand the financing of a project? You could go back and get an MBA purely for finance as it pertains to the engineering industry. That would probably be helpful if you know you're going down that route. If you get with the right company and you show promise in that area, they will probably want to invest in you as well, and that will help. The other thing is finding mentors who are already doing what it is you want to do. So if you really wanted to be in business development for an engineering firm, doing that with a mentor who's doing it right now, they can tell you more directly, here's how I did this. Here are the things that I did to build these skill sets, and here's how I was pushing myself to do this, daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it is. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, how do you balance being professional and being yourself when you're trying to build relationships or interviewing or that kind of thing?
So how do you balance being genuine, being yourself, and being in a professional setting, building professional relationships? It's hard. I think you have to be self-aware of, like, if you're like a naturally crass person, you should probably tone that down. Like, that's not something you want to bring into a professional relationship. But I think to some degree, you have to find your own style, like where you know what can and cannot be said in a professional setting. You're trying to help, if you're talking about like a client, if you're trying to help them through a specific problem that they're having, you're going to be focused on the problem. How you deliver that message is going to be specific to you. It's going to sound like you because you're the one saying it. As long as you aren't trying to sound like what you think someone who has that job sounds like, you'll be okay. But a lot of that is just doing it and having people around you who can critique how you did it and give you feedback. Like for certain stages of my career when I was first interfacing with clients, I had other people around me who, like, after we'd go talk to them, they'd tell me, that was good, but here's how you could have done that better. So I think looking for that feedback and having people around you who can give you that feedback is helpful. Especially as you go into a career, being open to feedback and understanding that it's coming from a place of trying to help you is super important, especially if you actually want to develop. Like I said, you're going to go through periods of growth, and part of that is accepting you're in a learning phase and you're not going to be great at this for a while. But if you accept that and you just really internalize the feedback that you're getting and you get comfortable in those settings, like building relationships, you'll find your own style of doing it. But a lot of it is expose yourself to doing it, find people who can critique your approach and give you feedback that helps you move forward, and find good mentors. They'll similar to the other question, they'll help you live in the gray, the things that no one can directly tell you how to do without you explaining the situation to them case by case.
Did you go through like the licensing process, and or do you have any advice for like studying for those exams while working?
Have I gone through the licensing process, and do I have any advice for studying for the? So I was supposed to take the exam when COVID hit, and then I became a manager. So I'll probably take it after April this year. Because I don't know if you guys are aware, but the PE is changing. It's going from breadth in the morning of every single topic and depth of a specific topic to you do breadth of your specialty and depth of your specialty, which right now is actually creating a lot of havoc with some of the licensing boards. Like in Illinois, they will not accept a structural PE because they're an, I'm using old terms, they're an SE state where you have to get the separate license that is 2 8-hour exams to be a structural engineer in the state of Illinois. As far as advice for taking the exams go and studying, for me, I'm an over-preparer, so I like to over-prepare. I think number one is figure out what your style is. Like, do you have to just study everything top to bottom to feel comfortable so you don't overthink what you're doing? The other thing is be pointed in what you're studying. Taking practice exams, especially if they're the more difficult ones, will help you gauge where you're at, where you need to spend your time. Like, you'll know if you're really comfortable with foundation design, then in the old exam, studying geotech for the breadth section might be kind of a waste of your time because you can figure it out as you go. If you do zero stormwater work or transportation work, if you don't remember how to set a horizontal curve or a vertical curve, or you don't know how to use the rational method, knowing how to brush up on those things is important. The other thing is that most of the time they're trying to get you to use the codes in an effective way. So like understanding the codes and being comfortable with those is going to help you a lot more than just drilling through practice problems. The practice problems help, but that's more true when it's a question that requires you to look up an example in a textbook. If they're telling you to design a column, they're usually trying to get you to use like one of the nomograph charts that tells you, you calculate the input on this side of the graph and the input on this side of the graph, you select a column based off that. Whereas it would have taken you like 10 or 12 minutes to do that same question. So finding efficient ways to answer the same question and using the code to the full capability is where I would spend my time. You'll end up being less stressed, you'll get through it a lot quicker, and that's really what they're trying to get you to do. You're going to use the code every day, you're not going to use your book every day, necessarily.
Okay, we've reached the end of our hour. Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, Cody, for coming. If you still have questions, I think maybe Cody could hang around for a bit. So again, have a great day. There's pizza. Grab some pizza on the way out. And 2 weeks from now, I think it's April 3rd, we'll have our second Career Accelerator lecture with Flynn Collins of ExxonMobil. So we hope to see you back then. Have a great day.